Melinda, please.
We're living in a time of unprecedented economic turmoil, as everyone here at Davos is talking about, and the global financial crisis that we're all facing really challenges the leaders of the future and around the world, many of whom are gathered here. Excuse me. Like all foundations and nonprofits, of course, we're closely monitoring the economic downturn, and we know that those who've struggled to access opportunity, even in the best of times, that these are the ones who are most affected by this economic downturn. Our goal for being here at Davos this year is to call attention to the importance of investments to improve health and development in poor countries. We're living in very difficult times, but we must not lose sight of the fact that those investments are achieving real results and are needed today more than ever. And simply put, aid works. Initiatives such as the Global Fund to fight AIDS, TB, and malaria, the Gavi Alliance, the U.S. President's Emergency Plan for AIDS Relief, these are saving millions of lives in the developing world. Bill and I are out seeing these advances in the developing world, and it's really quite impressive what's going on. Funding and partnerships to expand access to cost-effective and proven health solutions, revitalizing agricultural development, and increasing access to financial services. These are saving children's lives, they're improving opportunity, and they're helping millions of households lift themselves out of both hunger and poverty. Investments in areas like agricultural development have helped large numbers of people move out of hunger and poverty in parts of Asia and also Latin America. The percentage of people in developing countries living in extreme poverty has fallen from more than 30% of people in the 1990s to less than 20% today. I arrived here in Davos the other day directly from Ethiopia and Tanzania, and there I witnessed the real impact of health services on women, children, and mothers in the developing world. In Ethiopia, what I saw was really impressive. The government there is committing to 3,000 new health centers and health posts out in the most rural part of Ethiopia, where 85% of their population lives. They're training 30,000 young women to deliver health services to the population. So the healthcare system in Ethiopia is putting in place is really promising. It's exactly what we need to deliver these life-saving advances. They have supplies that they need, and they're training, employing, and health workers. They focused on getting a structure in place that can really improve their health care. And while there's still much to be done to achieve universal primary health care there in the next several years, it's quite impressive to see what they're doing. But the most important thing, I think, to emphasize here is the funding from the donor nations, and it's the leadership in that combination of the Ethiopian government and the donors that makes possible progress at all. For this work to grow and improve over time, we must continue foreign assistance. Although it's difficult to keep up foreign aid assistance on the front pages during a time of a crisis like we're in, it's important to highlight the success stories and to make sure that inequality that is out of sight is not out of mind. Only through broad public awareness and support will we keep both health and development aid on a positive track that it needs to stay on. Bill?
Well, good morning. This is the first time I've come to Davos working full-time on the foundation efforts. Over the years, I've had the opportunity to make several foundation-related announcements going back to about 8 years ago when we made a big AIDS announcement, a few years ago when we made some TB announcements, and today we have some new announcements as well. I'm really thrilled to be working full-time on these causes. I had a chance to write an annual letter that's on the foundation website that I hope some of you had a chance to look at, and I got to talk in depth about the health, the development, and the U.S.-based programs we're working on, and I hope my enthusiasm came through. Let me touch on some of the progress and just echo the theme that Melinda had, that there are some great things taking place. For example, with polio, we are very close to eradication. Last year was a tough year. The number of cases in the two hardest countries, India and Nigeria, went up. I was in India a few months ago talking to the government about how they're redoubling their efforts. After I leave Davos, I'll go down to Nigeria, in particular the north of Nigeria, where the use of the vaccine has been going up from almost no use in 2003. And so we're hopeful that with this extra effort and extra attention, that polio would become the second major disease to be eradicated after smallpox that was back in the 1970s. The increase in use of vaccines is also a phenomenal story. These are the vaccines you get when you're very young. It's expanded from about 6 diseases to 8. Gavi, the Global Alliance for Vaccines, has been responsible for adding in 2 new vaccines that save literally millions of lives. And the foundation is hard at work backing scientists to discover new vaccines that would be added in the future. In fact, if we can come up with about 6 or so new vaccines, the number of childhood deaths can be more than cut in half again. From 1960 until the present, it was cut in half from 20 million to 10 million. And I think in a much less time than that, hopefully in about 15 years, we can cut it in half again. And it's through these scientific advances. Now, we've talked about aid and the importance that that stays strong. Let me summarize how we see that situation. Over the last few years, there has been an increase in total aid. European countries in particular have been increasing. The United States has been increasing. That's been great to see. There's a number of countries, Norway, Sweden, Denmark, the Netherlands, who've always been fantastic, very high aid levels. And there's a number of others, including UK, France, and Germany, and now Spain, who are looking at getting up to those very high levels and have actually made progress. I'd say in addition that this aid is better focused than in the past. The portion that goes to health and food issues has risen substantially. The portion that goes to the poorest countries and has very concrete outcomes in terms of improving lives has increased as well. And that's partly why we've seen the increase, because it says those stories get out, you get the broad backing, and success breeds success. Of course, in this crisis, it's possible that these aid levels will be cut. In previous economic crises, aid levels were cut very substantially. Italy's a country that's at least contemplating a fairly large cut in their aid levels, and so hopefully we'll rally interest in changing that and make sure that no country is cutting back. Another area that has been great is to see business get involved. That's what I talked about as creative capitalism. I just came from a meeting of various companies in the food business, and it was amazing to see how they're taking their science, their buying power, their logistical understanding, and thinking about how to pull that together on behalf of the poorest. In the area of health, some of the drug companies are doing very good work. Tachi Yamada, who's here and runs our global health program, he and I visited GlaxoSmithKline recently to see their drug advances in their vaccine center that's in Belgium, and we were very excited to see the dedication they have and how that's become a strong partnership. And that's just one of many. We had breakfast this morning with Peter Turnan, who's best known as the CEO of Fox, but it's kind of unbelievable how he's gotten to know malaria, and he heads Malaria No More, and he's bringing all of his skills and contacts and energy to that. So that's a great story.
And as Bill said, it's not just governments that can play a role, it's also the private sector and individuals. And what we're here to do today is to announce the first results of a $34 million grant to the Global Network for Neglected Tropical Diseases. The network is bringing together new investors because they can see the opportunity and see what their impact can be if they take on a disease. And I think this is going to greatly reduce some of the most debilitating and disfiguring diseases by 2020. These are diseases that currently destroy the bodies of about 1.4 billion people, 1.4 billion people, and most of them live on less than $1.25 a day. And when you see what these diseases do to people's lives, it's really crushing. For example, some of these terrible diseases can have an extraordinary impact on these people's lives. And so if you take just hookworm, you can improve a person's future wage earnings by about 43% if you control hookworm. In the case of river blindness, it totally changes somebody's life if you give them a small life-saving treatment. In Kenya, we found that deworming can raise per capita earnings by over 30%. And in India, controlling lymphatic filariasis could add $1.5 billion to the country's GNP. I've seen lymphatic filariasis up close in Haiti, and I can see what it does to change somebody's life by giving them a life-saving treatment that's only 40 cents. The Global Network has provided an investment book that we're handing out today, and it shows you a lot of the diseases and what an individual investor can do and how many lives can be saved. Peter Hotez, Carrie Stover, and their colleagues at the Global Network have already brought significant new partners to the table, and a number of them are here in this room today. I'll just mention a few of them. Mark Foster, who's the Group Chief Executive, Management Consulting and Integrated Markets for Accenture, is here. Luis Alberto Moreno, the President of the Inter-American Development Bank, is also with us. Sagato Agato, President of Japan International Corporation Agency. Geraldine Ritter, the VP of Global Public Policy and Corporate Responsibility for Merck & Company. Richard Bagger, the Senior Vice President of Worldwide Public Affairs and Policy for Pfizer. And Joe Robert, Chairman and CEO of J.E. Robert Companies. And Mike Hoffman, the President of the Hoffman Fund, a partner of the Alliance for Global Good. We think this is a great way to leverage grant dollars. Prevention and control of neglected tropical diseases provide some of the best returns for global health with a small amount of investment. For approximately 50 cents per person per year, we can effectively and efficiently treat 7 of the most common neglectable tropical diseases. I would especially like to highlight a small story about Alex Huddle. This is a high school senior who lives in Pennsylvania. Alex was shocked to learn how many people were suffering around the world from diseases that were just so easily treatable. So what she did was she made t-shirts, and on the one side she said 1 in 6 on the front, and on the back of the t-shirt she said 50 cents for 7 cures. Alex raised over $2,000 for NTDs, and it shows you what just one child can do when they get motivated and see that they can make a difference. For corporations, private donors, donor nations, and even individuals, there's little else during this economic crisis that provides such a significant return on investment. An investment in neglected tropical disease control is truly one of the best in public health. So we're calling on everyone today who's here with us in Davos to join in on this campaign. Together we can really achieve some success in prevention and in treatment, and we can change the lives of more than 1 billion people who live with these diseases. So now we'd like to open the floor to questions.
Please wait for the microphone and identify yourself. Here, the gentleman here, and then we'll go over there.
Hi, I'm Benyeda, African Business Magazine and New African Magazine. You come from an industry where innovation is key, where if you don't innovate, you die, basically. And I wanted to know how much time the foundation is spending on questioning and challenging the current model of development and development aid. I was speaking to someone this morning, actually, who was just visiting some projects in Mozambique with the World Food Programme. And I understand the argument that there's no point sending a hungry child to school, because he won't learn. But some of the models which we're seeing, there doesn't seem to be an exit strategy, which means that they're unsustainable in the long term. So I just wanted to know how much time you're spending in sort of challenging the current concepts of aid and the way aid is administered to maximize the impact and with an exit strategy in the long term. Thank you.
Well, the term developing countries in 1960 meant a group of countries that all had very high birth rates and were all very poor. And the world was incredibly bimodal. There were the rich countries and these poor developing countries. And what's happened during the last 50 years is that aid has been a huge success. That is, today you wouldn't think of Mexico or Brazil or Thailand or China or even India as being in the same situation as Ethiopia or Central African Republic. And so what aid has done is it's allowed the virtuous cycle that once a country gets going with stability, health, education, high agricultural output, it no longer needs to get aid. And so the list of countries that receive development aid today is less than half of what it was in the past. You know, just that cutting 20 million child deaths down to 10 million, that alone more than justifies all the aid that's been spent. So certainly, you know, we every day are thinking how aid can be spent better. We know in our own grants we've made mistakes, things that didn't have much impact. Every grant we make, it's about how can we create something that's self-sustaining so we're not having to go back in. Inventions of vaccines or elimination of neglected tropical diseases, those fit the paradigm of you invest now and the benefits are there forever, and yet your investment doesn't have to continue. So, yes, I think that type of tough business analysis and drawing in the new innovative ideas is what we're doing our best to bring to the field, and I'm very impressed with our partners who are doing the same.
Here in front, please. Wait for the microphone, please.
Good morning. Shabtai Gold with BPA, the German press agency. Aid and politics somehow always manage to get themselves involved with each other. And I wanted to ask you if you had any thoughts specifically regarding the questions over generic drugs and ownership issues over medicines that are, in some parts of at least the developing world, becoming a major issue for people to be able to afford drugs and treatment. And if you can just share your thoughts on this issue.
Well, the key reason that we're making progress against these diseases is that there's been an incentive for drug companies to invent, and they've invented great drugs. And one of the things that's being applied in a very impressive way is what's called tiered pricing, where for the poorest countries, the drugs are priced at exactly what they cost to make, and so they get out there to provide the greatest good. And yet in countries that are richer, the prices allow some recovery so that there's the ability to invest and create new medicines. You might look at the report that we commission called Access to Medicines that goes through and rates the various drug companies in terms of their donation programs, working on the diseases that don't have the obvious market returns. And that report's been very helpful because the companies that were rated well feel good about it. The ones that weren't near the top of the list are now reaching out to see how they can do better. In neglected tropical diseases, there's some great things like the Merck drug donation, ivermectin, GSK with albendazole. There's quite a few that I think you can follow up with Carrie Stover on, where among the partners are these pharmaceutical companies who really been very good. In fact, if they weren't doing these drug donations, we couldn't be so optimistic about how the dollars that come in have such a high impact.
Question here over there, the person.
I'm Alec Hogg from MoneyWeb in Johannesburg. Mr. Gates, when Warren Buffett decided to join forces with you, he said he thought it might change the way that many wealthy people would look at philanthropy in the future. Has it? And have you also had other people like Mr. Buffett also joining in with the Gates Foundation?
Well, I'll take it, and Bill can answer if you want him to follow up. But I would say this. I think one of the things that both we and Warren agree to is that you partly provide leadership by showing the way. It's not that you go and shame people into doing things, but showing that philanthropy can be fun, it can be fulfilling, and that you get a return on your investment. Those are three key principles that we have in the work that we do. And so something like neglected tropical disease is one of the things that we realized was sometimes it's hard for people to see how their money can specifically make a difference. And so one of the reasons we did this specific grant was to say, look, even for a small amount of money, you can save millions of people's lives or change their lives in a country every single year. And so it gives people a chance to see, okay, if I make a $2 million investment or $1 million investment, which some of the partners in the room have done, this is the difference I can make in river blindness or in trachoma or changing a child's life. So we are talking to a lot of people behind the scenes who are very interested in getting involved in philanthropy, some in the areas of inequities that we're involved in, some in some others. And I think it's really them, when they're ready, they'll come forward and talk about what they want to do.
Yeah, I think we are seeing a positive trend in terms of people giving. And we wouldn't want to take credit for that, but we certainly want to collaborate with those people and make sure that whatever they do, if we can help, it'll be very, very effective. We have partners like Michael Bloomberg, who actually has taken the lead on tobacco. We get behind that and do some grants there. And as Melinda said, part of the idea here is to create opportunities so that people at different levels of scale can really identify what it is that their giving is responsible for.
Here, please wait for the microphone.
Good morning, John Zarakostas for the BMJ. I was wondering, Mr. Gates, if you have any analysis why after 60 years of the World Health Organization, we still have booklets with tables, neglected diseases. Thank you.
Well, I hope the term becomes obsolete. It's a very strange term, in fact, and you know, maybe we should change that. The visibility of these things is not particularly high, though. So I would say that the name is completely outdated right at the moment. You know, there's been some progress, and you know, what we're announcing today is hopefully a milestone along that way. There's actually an online journal that we were part of funding that gathers articles, and on the internet, scientists who work on these things are collaborating in new ways. And there was a lot of debate when the journal was started of should they be called neglected diseases or not, and what that meant. But for now, it's the term that most people use.
I think it's also worth saying, to be fair, that something like onchocerciasis has actually been eliminated in 10 West African countries. So they are making progress on these diseases. They're not simple things to solve. And so I think what we need to highlight, though, is some of the progress, and that we can make a difference by having more people involved.
Okay, one last question here from the lady over there.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Gates, I'm a reporter from China Entrepreneur Magazine, and I have two questions to ask you. The first one is, this year in the world political and economical affairs, what matters are you mostly concerned about and worried about? And the second one is, I'm wondering what's your advices to Chinese philanthropy industry? Thank you.
Well, I think it's great news that in China you have people who have been very successful, and I think it remains to be seen whether or not China will end up being like the United States, where a lot of people who are very wealthy devote both their money and their time to the causes of the neediest. I'm certainly going to be spending some time there, you know, spreading the word about why we're enjoying the work we do and how we see it as being successful. I'm actually in China for a tuberculosis meeting in a few months, but we'll also sit down with people who are thinking about philanthropy. You know, here at Davos we have Jet Li, who's got a way of gathering lots of small donations, and it's raising this visibility of giving, which I was very impressed with some of the ideas he has and the energy he's bringing to that. So I think it's very possible in China we'll see a movement, but that hasn't begun yet. In terms of priorities, you know, obviously health and food are the needs of the poorest, and even in a crisis like this, we should keep that in mind because the poorest are the ones who will suffer the most as there's less output and the economy is backing off. So within health, you know, polio is a priority because we're close to that, but you know, there's a lot of different areas, and we need to proceed in parallel.
Unfortunately, we have to leave it at that. I can invite you for further information to contact Dr. Tachi Yamada from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, or Carrie Stover, an expert on the neglected tropical diseases. With that, Mr. Gates and Mr. Gates, thank you very, very much for coming and your time.